Good evening. You're watching State of Business on our television. This is Zeenat Musafir. Let's take a look at the headlines first. Meeting to mark Policymakers' Day of National Early Childhood Care Week held. National Export Strategy to be launched on the 19th of July 2018. News in details. A high-level meeting to mark the Policymakers' Day of the National Early Childhood Care Week 2018, organised by the Department of National Planning together with the UNICEF, was held in Colombo this morning under the patronage of Minister of Finance and Mass Media, Mangala Samaraweera. Addressing the gathering, Minister Samaraweera noted that his ministry's objective is to increase the amount of money invested in education by a further 6% by 2025. The event was attended by Professor Edward Melhuish, Professor of Human Development at the University of Oxford, the Regional Director for South Asia, Jean Gore, parliamentarians, ministry officials and members of the Diplomatic Corps. During the event, budget proposals of early childhood development in the areas of health, nutrition, education and child affairs were presented to Minister Mangala Samaraweera for his consideration in the national budget for 2019. The event stressed upon the need for implementation of proposals that have already been presented, as they have the potential to transform the lives of children and drive Sri Lanka's economic growth.
During the very week, the Treasury is preparing itself to send its budget call for the year 2019. I was delighted to accept some of these proposals today. I would like to assure you that after studying these proposals, we will be including many of them in the budget speech which will be presented in November. Early childhood development is of great importance to Sri Lanka as it has the potential to improve school learning outcomes, which can have long-lasting effects on the well-being of the population. As Sri Lanka positions itself as a highly competitive, knowledge-based economy, robust cognitive developments from an early stage becomes essential. Our objective is to raise the money invested in education to 6% by the year 2025.
Expressing his views on early childhood development in Sri Lanka to achieve a stable and reconciled country, consultant psychiatrist of the National Institute of Mental Health, Dr. Maheshan Ganeshan, noted that ethics and moral studies should be included in the education system instead of leaving them up to religious institutions.
One of the biggest problems in our education system is our education does not focus on ethics, morality and things. We leave it to religious institutions or families to do whatever. And that is a big problem for this change of culture. We can't do it without bringing it into even preschools. How do we care? How do we deal with a person with a disability? How do we accept them? The concept of inclusion. Children don't know how to do that. Or even gender. We separate children at gender, ethnic wise, every wise, we separate children. That's a big problem in bringing a peaceful and reconciled society. Our education system is still listen, write down, memorize, tell it back in the exam.
And in preschool also you're talking about?
Even in the preschool it's the same. When children are inquisitive, when they want to be creative, when they ask questions, they are suppressed. Right? So the whole culture is an issue. The culture around education is an issue. We still go back and use the educational system during the colonial era, where the children were supposed to obey, respect and listen to the teacher. So that whole culture has to change. If you want to create more creative and people who are entrepreneurs, who can create stuff. So that is a big issue. That culture has to change even at the home front, where parents have to encourage children questioning them, asking questions and being critical about it.
The chairman of the Export Association of Sri Lanka, Harin De Silva, stated that the National Export Strategy, which will be launched on the 19th of July, is a great opportunity for the private sector and the government to work together. De Silva made this remark addressing the 21st Annual General Meeting of the Exporters Association of Sri Lanka held in Colombo recently.
Early last year, the government of Sri Lanka extended the EASL an opportunity to be a member of the core team that has now concluded the formulation of the National Export Strategy, or NES, for Sri Lanka. The NES is spearheaded by the Export Development Board, or the EDB, and was empowered by the Sri Lanka Export Development Act to prepare a national strategy for the next 5 years. It is a collaborative effort between the state sector and the private sectors to provide a detailed and prioritized 5-year action-oriented framework for the development of the trade and competitiveness, particularly for the benefit of the SME sector in Sri Lanka. This gesture by the government has not only highlighted its willingness to work with a reputed stakeholder from the export sector, it has also gone a long way in making sure that the government realizes the importance of a public-private sector partnership in shaping the future of Sri Lanka's exports policy. The NEST document is now completed and is scheduled to be launched by the Prime Minister himself at an official launch to be held at the Temple Trees on the 19th of July. The success of this document will depend entirely on the political will and ability of the incumbent government to drive the national export strategy. It is absolutely imperative that either His Excellency the President or the Honourable Prime Minister personally oversees the implementation process of the recommended policies in the national export strategy. The private sector cannot be called upon to drive this on behalf of the government.
Speaking further, the chairman of the Export Association of Sri Lanka, Harin De Silva, stressed upon 5 main points that could form the foundation for the growth in the Sri Lankan export sector.
Over the last 2 years, the Exporters Association of Sri Lanka on our own have developed 2 documents under the title Recommendations for a National Export Strategy. This year is no different. We have already proceeded to develop our 3rd document. Our 3rd document focuses on 5 main points that are currently essential in formulating the foundation for growth of Sri Lankan exports. Point number 1, driving the national export strategy. The government must ensure that a predictable and transparent policy and regulatory framework is in place to promote trade competitiveness of the Sri Lankan export industry. Point number 2, improving the investment climate for exports in Sri Lanka. Point number 3, addressing the constraints for market access and promotion. The government needs to develop an export promotion portal by leveraging on existing institutional setup of the government and the private sector to provide up-to-date market information on opportunities available in strategic export markets for Sri Lanka. Point number 4, proactive engagement in trade liberalization. The government needs to develop a structured mechanism with a robust communication strategy for obtaining timely feedback from the export sector stakeholders concerning ongoing FTA negotiations. And I stress this is especially important for offensive interests of Sri Lankan exports. Point number 5, fostering innovation to drive exports. The government needs to convert the current Coordinating Secretariat for Science, Technology and Innovation, which is also known as COSTI, to the National Science, Technology and Innovation Coordinating Authority, or NASTICA, where the focus will be on commercial ventures. The implementation of this strategy will need to be dynamic, with a strong institutional framework for effective public and private sector coordination. The success of the strategy will be on reorienting the present mindset in research institutions.
We're going in for a short break. Do stay tuned for more news after these commercials. Welcome back. During an exclusive interview with Art Television, the chairman of National Institute of Exports, Dr. Jagat Piri, stated that the country should focus on enhancing exports further in order to expand the economy and to achieve the target of $25 billion by 2025.
The NIOE is, as I said earlier, National Institute of Exports, is a non-profit organization formed purely for the purpose of increasing the country's exports or to have a rapid growth in the exports during the next few years. So for this purpose, we need to use the resources that we have. We have a lot of natural resources. We have a lot of skilled labor. We have a lot of educated people. Some of these people, after their O-level, A-level, they go for tri-short driving and things like that, where their efforts are not being very well used. They can do much more productive, value-added work. Some of them go to other countries, and of course they don't do proper work or nothing. There's no benefit for Sri Lanka's economy other than the foreign exchange they send us. There's no absolute benefit for long term. So we need to use all these skills and try to get them also involved in international trading. Because international trading will always be useful whatever the global economy is, everybody would like to have international trade in their countries. So that is more and more exports would always make the country stronger. So I think everybody should get together and to try to see that exports should be the main area to be focused, and the country should try to do at least 25 billion US dollars by 2025.
Now let's take a look at the weekly economic indicators released by the Central Bank of Sri Lanka last Friday. The index of the industrial production increased by 2% in May 2018 compared to the corresponding month of 2017. During the period, crude oil prices followed a declining trend. Prices fell after the US said it would consider requests for waivers from sanctions on Iranian crude exports and the reopening of Libya's export terminals. Further, markets shrugged off a warning that spare capacity may be stretched as OPEC and Russia increase production. Overall, Brent and WTI prices fell by $3.30 per barrel and $3.70 per barrel, respectively, within the period. The weekly average weighted prime lending rate for the week ending 13 July 2018 increased by 1 basis point to 11.34% compared to the previous week. The reserve money decreased compared to the previous week mainly due to a decrease in deposits held by commercial banks. The total outstanding market liquidity increased to a surplus of 24.77 billion rupees by end of the week compared to a deficit of 22.83 billion rupees by the end of last week. Moreover, during the year up to 13 July 2018, the Sri Lanka rupee depreciated against the US dollar by 4.1%. Given the cross-currency exchange rate movements, the Sri Lanka rupee depreciated against the pound sterling by 2.2%, euro by 1.9% and Japanese yen by 4.2%, while appreciated against the Indian rupee by 2.5% during the period. The West End Law Centre recently organised a seminar with the theme Towards the Main Financial Hub of Asia, Port City, Colombo 2018, joined by leading experts in the fields of law, economics and business. The seminar outlined products and services which can be of value to high net worth investors and potential benefits of the port city. Speaking at the event, permanent representative to the United Nations in Vienna, Laksiri Mendis, made the following remarks.
Individual asset protection trusts. These have been the major investments in these offshore centers. And when they come to see their trust operation, when they see the country beautiful, they also bring inward investment. So offshore businesses have a multiplier effect on the national economy. When they come to Sri Lanka with these facilities like the port city, which is creating for the high net worth individuals, they might even step a little bit out and put money into the national infrastructure or national investments. Such offshore financial products and services can create high-end jobs and employment for professionals at various levels, secretaries, accountants, auditors, with multiplier effect on the local economy.
We're going in for a short break. Do stay tuned to see how the stocks perform today after these commercials. Welcome back. Trading at Colombo Stock Exchange ended on a mixed note today. The all-share price index dropped by 7.46 points to close at 6,130.62, and the S&P SR20 gained 1.25 points to close at 3,336.07. The turnover was 304 million rupees and 13.3 million shares were traded. Next is Forex rates. That's all the news we have for you today. Join us tomorrow with State of Business on our television at the same time. Until then, take care and good night.